The explosion wasn't quite an explosion, more like an enthusiastic water eruption that blew the pump room door clean off its hinges. Karen emerged riding a wave of chlorinated water like some demented aquatic superhero, still clutching her wrench and wearing an expression of vindicated triumph. "I fixed it," she announced to the stunned crowd, even as water continued gushing from behind her in ways that definitely suggested the opposite. Chief Rodriguez and two paramedics rushed toward her, but Karen waved them off. "Just a minor pressure release. Completely normal in major infrastructure repairs." The pool, meanwhile, had begun draining at an alarming rate. What had been murky green water was now a rapidly emptying concrete bowl, revealing years of accumulated debris, several lost pool toys, and what appeared to be a lawn gnome that no one remembered using. "Karen," Mike Henderson approached cautiously, "I think we need to call the professionals now." "The professionals?" Karen laughed, a slightly manic edge creeping into her voice. "The professionals who've ignored us for 3 days. I just solved our problem permanently." "By permanently, do you mean you've destroyed the entire pool system?" Janet Morrison's voice was carefully controlled. Karen looked back at the continuing water flow, then at the empty pool, then at the soaked crowd of neighbors, who were all staring at her with expressions ranging from horror to fascination. "Sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette," she said finally. "This isn't an omelette, Karen," Mike said. "This is a catastrophe." The fire department managed to locate the main water shutoff, finally stopping the deluge. In the sudden silence, everyone could hear the pool's filtration system making a sound like a dying whale. Karen's phone, miraculously functional despite its earlier submersion, buzzed with a call from her insurance agent. "Mrs. Weatherby, we've had some interesting reports about your community pool." As she answered the call, walking away from the crowd with her head held high, the assembled residents began to grasp the full scope of the situation. The pool wasn't just broken, it was comprehensively destroyed. The mechanical room looked like a water bomb had detonated. The tennis courts were flooded, and Karen Weatherby, the woman who'd caused it all, was currently explaining to her insurance company why this was everyone else's fault. "She's actually proud of this," whispered Mrs. Chen to Mr. Peterson. "That's what scares me," he replied. Behind them, the pool's drain system made one final, gasping sound before falling silent forever. Karen finished her call and turned back to the group, her expression shifting from triumph to something more calculating. "Well," she announced, "it appears we'll need to file some claims and probably hire new contractors. I'll be coordinating all of that, naturally." The crowd exchanged glances. Mike Henderson opened his mouth to protest, but Karen was already pulling out a waterlogged notebook. "I'll need a complete incident report from everyone, and we'll definitely need to discuss the city's liability in this matter at the next board meeting." As she began assigning tasks with the confidence of someone who hadn't just single-handedly destroyed community property, the residents realized something terrifying. Karen wasn't finished. This was just the beginning. 3 weeks later, Karen Weatherby sat in her living room surrounded by an impressive fortress of legal documents, insurance forms, and contractor estimates. She transformed her dining table into mission control for what she now called the Willowbrook Pool Restoration Project, complete with color-coded files and a whiteboard covered in diagrams that looked like battle plans. Her doorbell rang with the persistence of someone who wouldn't be ignored. "Karen," Mike Henderson's voice carried a note of desperation. "We need to talk." She opened the door to find the entire HOA board standing on her porch, looking like a delegation arriving for peace talks after a very small war. "Michael, Janet, how lovely. I was just reviewing the 17 different contractor bids I've obtained for our pool renovation." "Our pool renovation?" Janet's eye twitched. "Karen, the insurance company denied our claim. They called it deliberate destruction of property by an unauthorized individual." Karen waved dismissively. "Insurance companies always try that tactic initially. I've filed an appeal and contacted my lawyer about pursuing the city for their role in this disaster." "What role?" Mike's voice cracked slightly. "The city had nothing to do with our pool. Negligent oversight of community infrastructure," Karen replied smoothly, consulting her notes. I've documented a clear pattern of municipal failure to maintain adequate safety standards for residential facilities. Ward member Tom Richards, who'd remained silent until now, finally spoke up. Karen, the pool repair estimate is $47,000. The insurance won't pay, the city won't pay, and half the community wants to sue you personally. Karen's smile never wavered, which is why I've taken the initiative to explore alternative solutions. She led them to her dining room, where her documentation fortress had grown to include architectural drawings, municipal codes, and what appeared to be a complete legal brief. I've researched every relevant statute and discovered that the city is required to provide recreational water access within residential communities. Since they failed to ensure our pool remained functional, they're obligated to fund the replacement. That's not how any of this works, Janet said weakly. I've also identified 12 code violations in the original pool construction that the city inspector should have caught. We have grounds for a lawsuit that could cover not just repairs, but upgrades and punitive damages. Mike stared at the organized chaos of Karen's legal research. Despite himself, he was almost impressed by the thoroughness of her delusion. Karen, even if any of this were viable, which it isn't, the legal costs alone would bankrupt the HOA. Which is why I've contacted Channel 7 News about doing a story on government negligence in suburban communities. Karen's eyes gleamed. They're very interested in our situation. The board members exchanged horrified glances. A news story meant public attention, which meant scrutiny of the handling of the situation, which meant potential personal liability for letting Karen near the pool equipment in the first place. You contacted the media? Tom's voice was barely a whisper. Investigative journalist Sarah Kim is coming tomorrow to interview me about the systematic failures that led to this crisis. Karen opened her laptop, revealing an email chain with the news station. She'd sent them photos of the destroyed pool, copies of her research, and a detailed timeline of events that somehow made her look like a whistleblowing hero rather than the cause of the problem. The story airs Thursday night, she announced cheerfully. I've prepared talking points for all of you, in case they want additional interviews. As the board members filed out in stunned silence, Karen returned to her documentation with satisfaction. The pool might be destroyed, but she turned it into something much more valuable, a crusade. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Weatherby, this is Sarah Kim from Channel 7. Looking forward to our interview tomorrow. This story is going to be huge. Karen smiled and reached for her legal pad. She had a lot more research to do before the cameras arrived. Outside, the empty pool sat like a concrete crater in the middle of the community, a monument to what happened when Karen Weatherby decided to take charge. But as the neighbors were beginning to realize, the pool had just been the beginning. The real question wasn't whether Karen would succeed in her increasingly complex legal and media campaign. The question was what she'd decide to fix next. Karen Weatherby stood ankle-deep in murky pool water at 6:47 a.m., wielding a pool skimmer like a medieval weapon while screaming at a confused city inspector who'd come to check water meters. "This is government negligence," she shrieked, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair now resembling a wet poodle. "My property values are plummeting because of your incompetence." The inspector, clipboard clutched to his chest like a shield, stammered, "Ma'am, I'm just here about the water meters." "Don't ma'am me. I pay taxes. This pool has been broken for 3 days, and not one government official has lifted a finger." Karen jabbed the skimmer toward him, flinging alga-laden water across his uniform. What the bewildered inspector didn't know was that this wasn't even Karen's pool. It belonged to the Willowbrook HOA Community Center, and Karen had appointed herself as the unofficial pool crisis manager after the maintenance company cited equipment failure and promised repairs within the week. 20 minutes earlier, she'd marched into the community center with a toolbox she'd bought specifically for this mission, announced to the teenage lifeguard that she was taking charge, and promptly locked herself inside the pump room. The subsequent explosion of water and sparks had sent both the lifeguard and an early morning swimmer fleeing. "Ma'am, you're trespassing on city property." The inspector tried again, backing toward his truck. "City property? This is a private HOA facility. Karen's voice reached a pitch that made nearby dogs howl. And if the government won't fix what they broke, then I'll fix it myself. She turned and marched back toward the pump room, leaving wet footprints and the lingering scent of chlorine and fury. The inspector, grateful for his escape, drove away without completing his entirely unrelated water meter inspection. Inside the pump room, Karen stared at the tangle of pipes and electrical boxes she'd somehow managed to disconnect in her initial diagnostic assessment. Water pooled around her designer sneakers, a $200 pair she'd specifically chosen for their professional crisis management appearance. Her phone buzzed with increasingly frantic texts from other HOA board members who'd heard about her unauthorized pool intervention. Board President Mike Henderson's message was particularly urgent. Karen, please exit the pump room immediately. The fire department is en route. She snorted. Mike had always been weak, probably in cahoots with the maintenance company's deliberate delays. Well, she'd show them all what real leadership looked like. Karen rolled up her sleeves, grabbed the largest wrench from her emergency toolbox, and approached the main pipe junction with the confidence of someone who'd watched exactly 3 YouTube videos about pool maintenance. How hard can it be? She muttered, just as the fire department sirens began wailing in the distance. The fire department's arrival brought unwanted witnesses to Karen's expertise demonstration. Through the pump room's small window, she watched red trucks surround the pool area while she continued her repairs with increasing desperation. Mrs. Weatherby, Fire Chief Rodriguez called through a megaphone. Please exit the mechanical room immediately. Karen ignored him, focused on the pipe connection that seemed designed to confuse her. She'd already flooded the room twice and somehow managed to turn the pool fountain into a geyser that was currently soaking the tennis courts. But she was close to a breakthrough. She could feel it. I'm almost finished, she shouted back, wrestling with a valve that refused to cooperate. Her phone rang. Mike Henderson again. Karen, what the hell are you doing? Saving this community from incompetent contractors and government corruption, she panted, attempting to tighten a connection with her left hand while holding the phone with her right. The fire department says you flooded the entire mechanical building. Minor setbacks are part of any major infrastructure project, Mike. Karen, this is insane. You're not a pool technician. She paused, wrench midair. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration and 22 years of home ownership experience. I think I know how to fix a pool pump. Please just come out so we can talk. The line went dead as water finally reached her phone. Outside, the situation was escalating. The geyser had shifted direction, now spraying directly onto the community center's roof, where it cascaded down like a waterfall onto the gathering crowd of concerned residents. Mrs. Chen from Unit 47 was filming everything with her tablet, while Mr. Peterson attempted to redirect the water flow with a pool noodle. She's been in there for 2 hours, shouted Janet Morrison, the HOA treasurer. The insurance company is going to have our heads. Through the chaos, Karen heard fragments of conversation that fueled her determination. Always knew she'd snap eventually. Someone should have stopped her years ago. Remember the mailbox incident? The mailbox incident, as if fighting for proper mail delivery standards made her some kind of extremist. A new sound emerged from the mechanical room, a grinding, metallic screech that made everyone step back. Chief Rodriguez tried the door again, finding it remained locked from the inside. Mrs. Weatherby, we're going to need to break down this door if you don't come out. Inside, Karen faced a horrifying realization. The grinding sound was coming from the main pump, which was now making noises like a dying robot. Water sprayed from 3 different locations, and she could smell something burning that definitely wasn't supposed to be burning. Her emergency YouTube videos hadn't covered this scenario. But surrender wasn't in Karen Weatherby's vocabulary. She grabbed the largest pipe wrench and approached what she was fairly certain was the root of all problems. A large, ominous-looking valve marked emergency shut-off. Sometimes, she declared to the flooded room, heroes have to make the hard choices.